Hello everyone, Dan Swift here, founder and CEO at Numentum, and welcome to the Speaker Series, where we speak with some of the most interesting minds in the world of revenue generation. At Numentum, we help forward-thinking B2B organizations create better buyer experiences and deliver new momentum to their revenue engine. On this episode of the Speaker Series, we speak with Tom Thorpe, VP of International Markets at Broadcom Software. We have a great conversation around being a partner with our customers, managing the ever-changing logistics of a post-pandemic world, and how we deliver new momentum to their revenue engine. Tom, welcome to the Speaker Series.
Thanks, Dan. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on. I feel honoured.
Now, there it is. So how are the Midlands today? Tom's our listeners are in the UK.
Yeah, well, it's been a busy time. For you say I have lived just outside Birmingham for over 20 years. In fact, I was actually born here a few years before that, and actually the sun is nearly shining here, which is always a bonus. But we've just had the Commonwealth Games actually over the last few weeks here, and so there's actually a really positive energy around Birmingham at the moment. It's great to see and be part of, and I was lucky enough to take my two daughters and the wife and I went to the opening ceremony actually, and it was really special, really good. So yes,
I can't hear
how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm very well. I can't hear the Birmingham accent though, Tom. That seems to have disappeared over the last 20 years or so.
Well, that's a fair comment. I actually was born here, but my parents were social workers, and after a couple of late night call outs, which in the early 80s they had to do on their own into the centre of Birmingham, they decided that it might be better to relocate the Thorpe family. I have a younger brother as well, so we all stick. And actually, I grew up in a small town in the Cotswolds called Cirencester, which is why I do have a Brummie accent occasionally, but often it doesn't come through.
There you go.
I came back here, gosh, it's probably at least 20 years ago now, after meeting my now wife in a nightclub in London. So there you go. So,
well, for people, I was going to say, for people listening, I'm from Yorkshire, and I think if I spoke in my Yorkshire accent, I don't think people would understand a word of what I was talking about. So, well, for context for our listeners and to set the stage a little bit for today, Tom, why don't you kick us off with an overview of Broadcom Software, and how does the organization help companies achieve their business objectives?
Yeah, so I think for those that maybe not so familiar with Broadcom and Broadcom Software in particular, Broadcom Software really focuses our direct efforts working with typically large enterprise and enterprise customers that really kind of share a set of characteristics. So typically got very complex IT environments. They are dealing with moving to the cloud in some respect, but hybrid is often used in this term, and I think it's very fair for our very large sort of enterprise clients. And often they're in regulated markets, and the software that we provide them, I think, really does sort of three things. We're really focusing on supporting the underlying infrastructure and their applications, genuinely supporting the world in many ways, but in terms of the business they do. So we're very focused on sort of modernizing that, optimizing it, and of course particularly with the acquisition of Symantec as well, protecting our clients and their customers as well. And we are 100% focused on making sure that our clients get fantastic value out of the assets that they already have with us through our portfolio, and of course working with them on their journey to ensure that they get great value from our portfolio moving forward as well.
Amazing. Now, you're the VP for International Markets, and this is $1 billion plus business with more than, I think, 200 people in your world. Is that right? So can you tell us a little bit about the scope of your role?
Yeah. So it's a fabulous role, and I'm lucky enough to work with customers and colleagues. I think it's over 20 countries.
Wow.
I think it's over sort of 10 time zones, which is sometimes has some practical challenges. Not least, obviously, working for a West Coast-based American company as well.
Right.
The days can be long. But I think it's a fabulous role. I get to work with some incredibly smart people in my organisation, and of course some fantastic customers, and really get the opportunity to, I suppose, genuinely see what the biggest challenges that are often talked about in IT, actually how some of the biggest organisations in the world are trying to deal with those. And I hope we play a small part in trying to help them solve those challenges. It's a great role.
Now you mentioned Symantec, and you were the VP, if I recall, for Northern Europe at Symantec for about 3 years, right, prior to the acquisition, and then you became the president of EMEA Enterprise for Broadcom, and then a few months later we had a global pandemic. So obviously you were able to navigate that pretty well, because you were then promoted to the vice president for international markets less than 12 months later. So for our listeners, when you look back at the last 2.5 years or so, what have you, and this is a big one, what have you learned about yourself, both personally and professionally?
Wow, that is a big question, isn't it? I think personally, and this, I'm very fortunate to be married to a head teacher of a secondary school, and so that's a local school to where we live, and the age range there is between 11 and 16, so it's about 1,000 pupils. And I want to say that on a personal note, I think the last few years I do feel very fortunate. I mean, I think you have to feel fortunate when you see the experiences that the young generation, if you will, not at least my children, but we're going through, and the impact on everybody societally in regards to COVID. And I think you have to be mindful enough to recognize that, honestly, this hit people extremely hard, and sometimes you have to thank your lucky stars, as they say. But sometimes the impact for me personally and professionally was one really of limited impact and professional growth. I was again very lucky that my family and the extended family were all okay through COVID as well. And I think unfortunately, wherever and whoever's listening to this, I'm sure that may not have been the case. And so I think it almost feels like a bit of a distant memory now already. COVID, and that is a challenge in itself, because I think the impact of it, be that from a health perspective or an economic perspective, I think that's going to run for a long time. I don't think we're out of that yet. So again, I think you just when I look at my personal circumstances, I can only feel frankly very lucky about the situation. Professionally, I think it radically changed the way we do business, actually. And it also, I think, meant that the way we communicate with our customers and to each other, I think that had to change as well. And so there's been a lot of learning and growth there.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you mentioned a distant memory, and in the Swift household, as we speak, 3 out of 5 of us have got COVID. So myself and myself and my 7-year-old avoided it, but my wife and my 4-year-old and my baby did unfortunately get it, and everyone's fine, thankfully. But it's this whole, and you mentioned customers and colleagues. it feels as though a lot of leaders have shared that it's we've been let into the homes of our employees through WebEx or Zoom or whatever it is, and a lot of people have said we've gotten to know our people better because of this over the last 2.5 years. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely, and I it reminds me actually of a comment that one of my team made, which almost was a response to having to kind of bring people together more, which is, as I said, I personally feel very lucky that of circumstances and the family was safe and everything else. But as I said, for a lot of people, nothing else. The logistics of their lives changed dramatically overnight, and I think many people would naturally felt isolated because of that, and I think that it was very important that we recognised that as a leadership team and made more effort to bring people in to feel a bit more of a community, and that work perhaps was more than just the work. It was actually about building some relationships, and I guess more meaningful relationships with people over that period, because I think we have all sat in our homes and worked in certain periods of lockdown with very little other interaction with anybody else, on a one-to-one level. So this really did become the interaction that we had for a long time.
It's interesting as well, because we've obviously worked together now, and we'll talk about the program momentarily, but for about 12 months. And my kids have crashed a number of calls that we've had. And I think the global sales organization have met all three of them at some point. But it's interesting, before the pandemic, that would have been seen as, and it's not ideal, obviously, but it's that unprofessional. Whereas now everyone's like, oh yeah, say hi, come on in, let's meet. And everyone seems to have just, I think, been a little bit more open to that. I mean, it's work-life integration at the end of the day. You mentioned being a partner to your customers, and I know you mentioned the world has opened up a little bit and you've been back on the road. So I've seen you posting on LinkedIn, I've seen you in London, I've seen you in Paris, Bologna. Exactly. So now you're back out there. What do you, because again, we were locked down for a long time, what have you missed the most now that you're traveling again? What are you enjoying again?
Yeah, I think it's, you could possibly say it's a bit of a cliche, could you, about this sort of water cooler kind of conversation, but there's no doubt that you do lose some of the spontaneity from having a pre-scheduled call with an agenda and slotting neatly into a 30-minute or an hour diarized section of your preferred Outlook or Google Calendar. So and I think that kind of, especially for someone like myself, my role, who there are never enough hours in a day. That means that it can become very, very regimented, and it's call after call after call after call. And I think that does sometimes mean you don't have an ability to get that sort of spontaneity or with the rapport. I would also say, though, the flip side of it is actually in terms of productivity and furthering conversations. I think actually it's surprised many people, not just myself, how much more we can do in this setting. And to your point, I think a bit of that is because the whole world had to move, or the whole sort of working world had to move remote. What I think the topics and the conversations that we can have with our clients now, actually a lot more of that can be done over conferencing, if you will. So I think for me it's a lot about thinking about then, okay, well, when does this, when do you supplement face to face with this type of meeting? How do you think of engagements as a series of interactions, and which interactions will work best in what setting? I think if nothing else, from a sort of environmental perspective, jumping on a plane to do an hour meeting in Europe somewhere, and then having that as a focal point before returning home, I think we have to question that moving forward, as actually, does that make both sense in terms of time management, but also, and probably more importantly, actually from an environmental perspective,
Right.
I'm not that actually is something that we should be supporting now. So like everything, it's a balance, and I think the pendulum swung one way clearly,
Yeah.
artificially because of the pandemic, and now it's rebalancing that and working out what is as I say, a sort of suitable level of engagement and interaction using all communication methods. I think the other thing I'd say is, it very much also depends on the sort of demographic as well. So speaking with customers that particularly have lots of early careers or graduate programs, there are more challenges when that notion of sort of face-to-face training is perhaps more important. And I think that's where every company has got to get a balance based on what they're trying to achieve, what's the task or the purpose, but also who is going to be involved in that. And that will vary, of course, from customer, company to company.
Obviously, I'd love for you to chat a little bit about Empire, but what initiatives did you put in place during the pandemic to empower an organization that traditionally had walked the halls of customer organizations? Can you obviously chat a little bit about Empire, but what else have you done as well?
Yeah, so I mean, clearly Empire has been a big part of that, and I think but it's probably not the start of our journey. I think you and the team came along at a very appropriate moment, but it was appropriate because we'd taken some measures and actions, as an organisation before. I've written about this topic quite a bit, but one of the things I'm very proud about that the team and myself was engaged in is really, I think, kind of accelerating the maturity of Broadcom software. You have to remember Broadcom itself, within Broadcom has only been in existence for just under 2 years. So we had the opportunity to take the best of the organizations and the learnings we've all had as a team and sit down and say, right, well, how are we going to how are we going to take our experiences and actually improve this, and particularly on the backdrop of the last few years and the pandemic. And I think I'm very proud of some of the initiatives that we engaged and embarked upon. I think like so many organizations, we rely on individuals collaborating and say taking it out, now taking out of an office environment. Actually, that collaboration, even more so now, can be not just in the same team or country, but it could be over 20 countries in multiple time zones. And so what I wanted to do is to really, first and foremost, is enable that collaboration to happen as seamlessly and as quickly as possible. We are a very large client of Google. We use G Suite as our internal systems, and for me that was really important because that gave us a tool, a cloud-based tool, that meant we could really do some clever things to enable and accelerate the collaboration. That might be just how we use email. It was how we engage with our customers. It was how we collaborated on artifacts, presentations, content, and all of that, of course, when you enable a team to come together and start to work and store and share information that way, that of course has a flywheel effect of improving team collaboration as well. I think that kind of I've spoken about this. We kind of called it the 3 C's, but this was really to start with a kind of curation and then sort of collaboration is how we kind of talked about this. And the curation was really about, as I say, especially when everybody's suddenly dispersed, it's, well, how do you get access to all the right information? So we spent a lot of time bringing together sort of a central management system of record and having sort of central storage, which helped to make sure everybody had access to the information, and not just my direct organization, but also then all of our colleagues that work in the broader excuse the pun,
Mm-hmm.
Broadcom software group, and how could we help them understand what we were doing and be more transparent about the work and that we were engaging with our customers. So that was very we spent a lot of time on that. Once we really got that sort of the foundation element under control, we sort of then turned to collaboration, and then again that's really where we started to use more standardized on G Suite. We're using their portfolio of tools, and again having the ability to G slides, for example, and being able to collaborate time on a presentation that's stored centrally, I felt was extremely powerful. And then we overlaid that with a rollout of Slack, and that for me kind of gave us, I think, what I would almost kind of describe as like a virtual meeting room. So we were able to introduce Slack and empower the teams to have somewhere to go where they could collaborate, on an account discussion or on a team matter, whatever it may well be, and not only work there in a virtual environment, but also store information and have that one place to go. And then again, by opening up that channel, to use a Slack term, to other colleagues in Broadcom, everybody could see the great work that the teams were doing to support our customers, and collaborate even further. And that, I think, was extremely successful. And again, kind of coming back to one of the team and some of the comments around here, this has really made me feel like I've been part of a team, because that ability to see what was going on, to participate, to feel part of the interaction. And then finally, I say finally, but this is always a work in progress, of course. I talk about cadence, and actually the internal workings of our operation, and my operation in particular. Having worked for a number of very large organizations historically, and observed, worked with many large corporations, I often see very admirable strategic goals being laid out, the 3-year vision or the 5-year. But I become increasingly interested in connecting, what is often a CEO agenda or strategy with actually what are the people doing, the people that actually make the difference, picking up the phones, speaking to clients, the individual contributors, if you will, to use the phrase. Actually, how is their day-to-day tasks and actions actually supporting ultimately the strategy of the company? And I think this is a challenge for all large organizations. As you scale a company, how do you drive that connection and kind of get everybody walking in the same direction to the same drumbeat? And we were looking at a way of trying to improve our cadence internally, and possibly moving away, frankly, from that kind of very classical, traditional sales kind of, monthly reviews and weekly forecasts, quarterly updates. And as you know, within our portfolio, we've a fantastic what we call sort of value stream management portfolio, which is based on our Clarity and Rally technologies, but really is helping some of the world's largest organizations radically change the way they do business through Agile. And as the saying is, you want to drink your own champagne. And so we engaged our teams to help us understand how could we as an operation actually use Agile and bring that into my operation, and start to work in that way. And I think there were many benefits of that. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the other real benefits that we saw was we have customers that are broadly speaking moving to a agile methodology, or have done, and particularly when you're working within the IT operations of the customers, they're largely there in terms of the way they're structured and how they're operating. And of course, as a software company, the other side of us, we've got our developers and our business units also, working in an agile, Scrum methodology as well. And so what was interesting is when we took a step back, we go, hang on a minute, we're the group in the middle that should be bringing, our customers or our product, engineers and specialists to customers, and we're the ones not operating in the same way as both communities. And some of the greatest successes of this initiative has actually been where in the Scrum, which is how we've adopted from a perspective. Actually, in the Scrum, we not only have our of course, our team, my team, the team, but we also have, participation from the business units and the product owners, and then we have participation from our clients and their team. So we actually have collaboration, using Agile, as I say, and Scrum methodology, where we bring the companies together. I really don't think you can get any better than that. So it's been we're still evolving that, of course, but it's really been I think incredibly successful early stages, and actually I think probably we're quite a rare organization to have been able to adopt this in what is, I guess, a commercial organization. You don't tend to hear about this in other sales organizations, which I think is also really exciting. I think it's something different that people have got behind and the teams enjoy, and I think it gives us a different way of working that actually is much more aligned to how our customers are working now, which of course is absolutely critical.
I love it as well, because people do want to and need to feel like, what is my role in this bigger organization and this engine? And once they understand that and the impact that they're having day to day, they feel more bought in and will run through walls for you. And we've noticed it too, when not all organizations we work with are prepared to support each other in the same way that your people do. And as part of obviously our program, we're teaching them how to leverage relationships to get walked in the door to organizations, but further up in an existing customer organization. And your folks are doing this at scale. It's fantastic. So you built the foundations for us to leverage, I think, is the word. So thank you, John.
No, that's great to hear. I as I say, I think the idea of agile and iteration and improvement, the fact that it is something different, I think for an organization like the one I lead, I think, as you say, that does genuinely give people it piques interest. And I'm really pleased you said that, because it's almost a kind of nice bookend to how this section starts, which is we wanted to try and find a way of driving the team to feel like, and therefore achieving the goals that we needed as a leadership team, and ultimately Broadcom software needs. So I think absolutely we do a lot of work to show and to within the Scrum methodology and the feedback loops. All of that is based on, okay, so here is here's the we have a 3-year horizon, of course, but here's the 1-year horizon, here's the quarterly, and here's the monthly stand-ups, 2-week sprints. All of that is always linked up. So it's like a waterfall down, a waterfall up. So my hope is at any time, anybody in my operation can see what they're doing and how it ultimately, links back to what we need to achieve as not just as an organisation, but ultimately supports the strategic outcomes that Broadcom software are looking to achieve as well.
Love it. So what you've just described is a wonderful segue into leadership, because not all leaders would even try and deploy something like this. So so kudos. Now you've worked, I think, prior to Broadcom software, 8 years with HP and Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and then prior to that, I think it was 3 years with Blue Coat Systems, which full circle was acquired by Symantec. So I'm sure there's been some key influences throughout your career. What is the best leadership advice that you've ever received?
there's a danger of, again, you kind of get into cliches, don't you? And I think that, um, the idea of focus, I think, is incredibly important. And some of the, not meant to be the best advice, but also, observing, some of the best leaders, and frankly, also seeing where, you would say, well, actually, there may have been a better way of doing this. And I think what I would say is you're far better off picking one thing to do and getting it done, and getting it done well, particularly in a leadership position, because there's so many things that will drain your time or become a distraction, that actually, if you can keep your messaging simple and focused, actually you get great results from that. And the more I've, however long that is, 20 plus years in sort of the corporate world, is I see where where you don't have that focus, and you don't have a clear mission and goal and that communication, that's when things, inertia creeps in and things slow down. And that, speed is so important or velocity, I guess, is so important in our world. We have to keep moving forward, and anything that slows that down, I think, is really, really very is a real blocker to company success. So I think it's that focus, clarity, doing one thing, doing it well, I think is where I've seen the best leaders be successful, and why they're so successful.
There you go. You heard it here first, people. Focus.
Focus.
Yeah. So now you mentioned at the top of this conversation some of the crazy hours that you got to do, and $1 billion plus business, more than 200 people. So how do you as a business leader with so much responsibility stay balanced with such a big job and so much responsibility? How do you do that?
That's a great question. Probably someone needs to write that down. It is very difficult, and I think there is, hard work and having a work ethic. I think I believe there is no doubt that that, of course, leads to success. And I would love to say that you get the balance right the whole time, and I think that's very difficult. It's very difficult. I think there is definitely, from a business demands perspective, and it comes back to that sort of conversation we just had around focus. I think frankly, in any job now, it doesn't matter. I think in any job, there are probably more things you could do than hours in the day. And so it's about prioritization and focus on what are the important things, and not becoming distracted, because distracted takes time. And distracted means another 2 hours on conference calls at 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. And there's always going to be a balance there. You have, there's a certain demand, for every role in terms of that balance. But I think, that is how you cope with that, which is, tackling the big rocks first, and not, what's important and urgent, and working on those things rather than getting distracted. And then I think, on a personal level, the balance, the flip side of that is, I'm very lucky. I think for many of us, and probably yourself as well, we rely on an extended support network to make this happen. Right? So we're very lucky that we've got parents or grandparents that live close by, that provide that level of support, and have done really, whilst my children have sort of gone through to now sort of into their teenage years. Because without that, I think you would really struggle. particularly, as I said earlier, when maybe my wife also has a phenomenal career herself, and doing her thing. So I think that is really important, and I think it's too easy to say, oh, the balance is everything we can do. I think you have a certain level of control over, but I think it's also a set of circumstances that you also have that enable you to do that. And I think it is a team, isn't it? I mean, the truth is, comes back to these words time and time, whether we're talking in a business context or a personal context, but it is all about teamwork. And yes, you have to forgo a few things, and yes, you maybe can't do everything you'd like to do, but I think the balance and teamwork is really perhaps how I'd summarize it.
So this has all been, as I expected, a wonderful conversation, but it's all been very positive. There must be frustrations. There has to be. So what's a non-starter for you, Mr. Tom Thorpe? What's the one thing that frustrates you about business, about people, about life? What is that one thing?
Well, I would almost turn that around and say everything that, and I think, we've known each other now for the best part of a year, and I think, and those that, have known me or worked with me know that I hope one of my best characteristics that I bring to the, to the work or person is just I'm genuinely a positive person. And I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but I'm always try to remind myself of however difficult the role is or the situation that we encounter, there are people in far worse situations than I will ever be in. So I think there's an element, I'd hope, of just recognizing a little bit of self-awareness that it's we can't get too down about this. There'll always be challenges, but I think we have to sort of take those in the context that they're in, perhaps. But then equally, I think you don't want people to be always artificially positive. But I think you do want to surround yourself with people, and I'm very lucky to have a fantastic team who exhibit this, who are naturally positive. And positive, I think it's interesting. Positive doesn't necessarily mean that the conversation can't be a difficult or challenging conversation, because I think you can positively move something on, which is important. And you don't want everybody always to necessarily agree with a point of view, but I think you have to have a positive outlook and be positive in how you move things forward. And therefore, I would just say, and we've all met people like this. You can just look at the opposite, and you think, if people only see the negative in the situation or can't see how to move something on, I think that is very challenging. And in a industry which is all about change and transformation and stay still, and everything is always moving, there's always something that we have to think about or we have to help our customers with. Actually, you have to have a positive outlook and want to move things on positively, because it's always changing, it's always evolving.
Wonderful, I love it. So Tom, obviously we've worked together and known each other now for the better part of a year. So tell us a little bit about why did you bring Empire in, and how have you felt it's progressed over the first 12 months?
I think it's a fantastic course, and I genuinely think the teams have got huge value from it so far, and as have I, actually, which I think there's that's hopefully a tick in the positive in terms of the overall program. We were looking for something slightly different to kind of provide some training and investment into my operation, and the sort of demographic of my team is we typically get people that have experience in the industry, so they're often sort of 20 years of experience, many of which have gone through the kind of classical customer success or sales training programs, and there's real value in those as well. I'm genuinely just a real believer in the power of learning and continued learning anyway. But we assume that our people have kind of done that, and they've got the experience in the kind of foundation areas of what their role is and how they do it.
Yeah.
So, and I think some of the questions earlier about COVID and the move, of course, to to sort of more remote working as well. I think we were looking for something that would work in that type of forum, and also frankly looking at training that also would help us use some of the newer tools, some of the newer platforms, that would be therefore a new experience and genuine learning opportunity for all of the team. And obviously then we found you, which was great.
It's been an interesting journey, because when we started working with you all, in terms of Broadcom Software's presence, right, on LinkedIn, the world's largest professional network, it was, let's call it, as a bit spotty. There's a lot of people still assigned to the previous acquired organizations, and now I get goosebumps even talking about it. It's so cool to see everyone on brand, on message on LinkedIn, all genuinely advocating for the organization that employs them, but educating their customers on LinkedIn as well. You essentially created an extension of the marketing organization, the brand, the messaging through your people, and they seem to want to do it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, we've spoken about this, of course, before, but I think one of the outcomes of the training program and the benefits to us as an organization is exactly what you said. It was that the ability to move, as I said earlier, with Broadcom Software Group being a relatively new organization, being established, these were some of the things that we needed to do. We needed to move the team to represent Broadcom Software Group, and as you say, like many companies, when you look at LinkedIn profiles, it's a reflection of where everyone's been, rather than where they are. So to quickly bring everybody, to your point, to a consistent messaging on brand, that amplification effect of having hundreds of people suddenly with a consistent backdrop and brand of Broadcom Software was brilliant. Absolutely. And that was a huge benefit to us, that came out of the training program early on, in the program itself.
Yeah, I love when I'm hearing from folks who maybe were a bit skeptical initially about the use of LinkedIn to deepen their relationships with customers, and then them maybe 12 months on coming back and saying, "Dan, thank you. We've identified new groups of people within customer organizations we've worked with for years who want to learn more about what we've done." So seeing them use tools like Sales Navigator has been absolutely phenomenal, and it's becoming part of their day-to-day routines. I think it's wonderful.
I agree. I would summarize it by saying two things. One is we want to connect with our customers in whatever way they feel most comfortable, and so we spoke earlier about video conferencing face to face. I see and of course classical email. I think LinkedIn gives us another channel by which to communicate and network with our customer base, and recognizing that there are many tools that we can use within that platform to help our customers connect with us and vice versa. That's been fantastic. I think the second point is just timing of this, and we've spoken about this, the amount and volume of interactions we have from prospects, or people prospecting on LinkedIn. You kind of go, oh gosh, that is not the best way you could use this tool. And so I still feel, I probably shouldn't say this, but I still feel we are sort of early adopters in terms of our usification of how we're using LinkedIn. And so I think that is giving us a competitive advantage to some of our peers in the industry, because I think this is a slightly different way of speaking to our customer base, and we will be led by them. If this is a way that they enjoy interacting, fantastic. It will allow us to balance the way we engage with our customers.
Before we let you go, though, you're not off the hook yet. So we
Nice.
like to wrap these sessions up, if you're open to it, with a quick fire round.
Oh,
I'll
gosh,
ask you
yeah.
some questions, right? Knee-jerk reactions, or maybe they're considered responses. We shall see. And if there's anything that you say that we want to dig a little deeper into, we will. But are you open to it?
Oh, well, I'll give it a go. Yes, yeah.
There you go. Start the
Slight
clock.
level of trepidation here, but yeah, go on. Yeah.
All right, here we go. First question. Who is your hero?
Oh, without the risk of sounding corny, I think my wife is my hero.
Not corny at all. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
The best sales leader that you've ever partnered with?
Oh, I couldn't possibly say. There's definitely at least 2 or 3 that spring to mind, and they would know who they are. So I'll leave it at that.
So diplomatic.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you a morning lark or a night owl?
Oh, I am a morning person. In fact, more and more so as I get older. And I think having to and this at the moment, but mine are a little older than yours, aren't they? But having gone through two young children in the last sort of 10 years, really, I think I was well conditioned that if it started with a 5, it was still morning. And I've kind of continued that on now, and try and get up early, exercise, and then start the day. And that works best for me. After about 3 o'clock and the news, I'm done, unfortunately.
5 a.m. That's a lion in my world. Okay, keep moving. Favorite city in the world?
Oh, gosh. Favorite cities that I've been to recently, I would say Barcelona was fabulous. Loved Barcelona, and very taken with Barcelona. I think Paris, phenomenal. Love, Paris is fantastic. It would remiss of me not to say London, of course. I think London, and of course, the favourite city in the world has got to be Birmingham, which I suspect is the only person ever to say that on this interview podcast. But I genuinely believe it. I think it's the best place in the world.
Amazing. How many cups of coffee a day, Tom?
Oh, too many. But I've just read an article that says you shouldn't drink coffee after 2 o'clock, so I'm doing my best to keep to it.
Good for you. Last question for you. What would you tell your younger self?
Good. Keep going. You're on the right track. That's what I'd say.
There you go. Love it. Tom, thank you for joining us, my friend. That was fun.
Pleasure. Yeah, no, great to see you as well. Take care, Dan. Thank you.